the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I hate ending on a question, but we all know the answer, right? We all know the answer. That yes, that is exactly what God wanted Jonah to do, right? Is to see the greater good. That he himself had not made the plant grow. So why would he be upset? He should be thankful that he had that plant for that day, right? So Jonah is an interesting character. Let's imagine what that would have been like in the fish. Whew. I'm so tired, I'm so hungry, except there's all this stuff down here. I don't even know what to do with this stuff. It stinks like, I don't know, anchovies maybe? I don't know if he had pizza or what he had last. Wait, there's more coming. There's more coming. Oh, get out of the way. Oh my gosh, I am so tired of this, being in this belly of this fish. It stinks. I don't know when I'm going to get out. I am so tired of this, and this is all God's fault. This is all God's fault. This is all, Nineveh's fault. It's all those darn people over there. If it's their fault, if they would have been better, then God wouldn't have had to send this. And I wouldn't have had to think better than God and help God out by going, God, you're wrong. They don't deserve compassion. I'll just leave instead. But apparently, God thinks he's right, I guess. So I'm stuck down here, But it's such a wicked city, and there's such a bunch of losers, and they're never going to change. Yes, I have changed a little bit, but I know they won't change. But I certainly probably did a little bit. But this is different. They are horrible people. I'm not... Oh, okay, all right. Well, I guess there are no little sins. You're right. So a sin is a sin. So yes, I have sinned. I got that. But you know what? Okay. Yes. All right. Yes, I know that I could have been just drowned. So I do appreciate, God, that you did, send the fish over to help me. But this is getting a little ridiculous. So how about this? How about instead of going to Nineveh, I'm just going to, you know what? I'll go there, but maybe I'll just do a vacation Bible school or something, right? Everybody loves that. It'll just be something fun. And then if they don't get converted, that's really not my fault because at least I did something. No, that's not what you want me to do. Okay. So how could you love me? Well, that is wonderful. I'm so glad. You love them too. But they are sinners, but so was I. Okay. All right, well then I guess I'll say yes. And I guess I need to be aware of that all people are worthy of your love. So, all right, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do this thing. And so off he went out of the whale. Maybe not the best way he could have gone, but I suppose there are worse ways you could have exited a whale, right? So let's listen some more to Jonah. So you figured it out, right? I'm Jonah. You've probably heard my story. And maybe if you think about it, you are probably glad that your life history is not written in the Bible, right? Because some of us, most of us, all of us, do things that maybe are not so wonderful. But yet God can still use us. If you think about it, I was probably the most successful missionary the world has ever seen. But at the same time, I was probably a personal spiritual disaster. So first of all, I've already said, you know it, you've read it, I didn't want to go. I wasn't only like Moses who argued with God about his personal qualifications, but I also kind of questioned God's judgment of sending anybody to help the Ninevites. Again, I'm trying to convince you maybe, but Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Does that tell you anything? Their civilization, it was horrible. It's kind of like saying that they were like the Third Reich, or like that they were run by like a Hitler type person. It was horrible. These people were terrible, truly. The Assyrians had a very successful business plan. Their ultimate goal was to conquer the world, and it didn't matter what they did to make that happen. And to facilitate this operation, they were very clear about what they would do to anybody who resisted. They tortured and they killed them in the most heartless manner possible. So it wasn't like I was being completely unreasonable by saying to God, these people do not deserve your love. The Assyrians provoked terror wherever they went, and that was the plan. If there was any chance of losing a battle with them, it was far better to surrender first. Everyone was so afraid of them. So I did not want to go, and can you blame me? I had no sympathy for them. I would not be able to disguise my disgust when talking to any Assyrian. Well, I tried, but God wasn't being reasonable, so I ran. I bought a ticket to the other side of the world. But did I really think that I could get away from God? Maybe not, but I hoped that I would be far enough away that God would decide to use somebody else closer to the target. Can we learn from the lives of others? Well, I hope you learn from mine. Don't do as I did, but also remember that even if you do, God will turn your rebellion into a tool for his kingdom. So again, you know the story. I got aboard the ship and breathed a sigh of relief. It pulled away from the pier that I had successfully escaped. Not. Again, you know the rest of the story. Confidence in my plan was eroded as the weather turned dangerous, but I still thought, you know what? To die is to escape. So when the sailors wondered who I was and what I was doing, I told them that I serve the God who made heaven and earth, and of course, who controls the wind and the seas, and that I was running away from them. So the fleeting thought did cross my mind that even if I attempted to get them to cooperate with my sailor-assisted suicide, I was being an evangelist. Maybe God had picked the right person after all. But it didn't matter because they were going to throw me overboard. Well, as I sank into the turbulent sea for the second time, I felt that, you know what? I had successfully escaped God's will. But of course, you can see the foolishness of this idea when you're sitting safely on dry land and not caught in the middle of a storm. But out of the blurry wetness as I went under the water, I noticed two things. The surface of the sea above me became like glass as I sank beneath it. And you know what? I saw those sailors fall on their knees at the rail of the ship. And my first, and I truly believed last, evangelistic campaign had been a success. Because there they were, on their knees, praying. But at the same time, then, from below came this sudden darkness that engulfed me. And again, you know how I felt in the middle of that moment when I was in the belly. What it was like. But you know what? I lived much to my disappointment. But finally, my stubbornness was broken after time in that fish. I could only imagine what God's next step for me would be had I not come to my senses then. I called to God in honest and humble prayer, and the monster vomited me out onto the beach and then probably departed in relief. Oh, you know what? All who transport me seem to find comfort only when they get rid of me. Well, when I got to Nineveh, apparently my reputation had preceded me. The story of the storm and the ship and the sea creature and my miraculous survival all had traveled there first. So I must say I liked the message I was charged to deliver. If I had known what it was at the beginning, I probably would have jumped at the chance to say to the evil people, in the 40 days, Nineveh will be destroyed. You know what? I proclaimed it probably with no compassion. And I must have been frightfully convincing because from the king on down, the people repented and turned to God. Maybe it was what had happened to me too on the ship and that they had heard the story of what the Lord had done. I should have marveled at the Lord's ability to soften their hearts of stone, but instead I was furious. I had desperately wanted to see revenge taken on those cruel people. Don't you want to get revenge on those that have hurt you? And I was waiting to see what God would do. What method would God do to get his revenge? I had read of the destruction of Sodom and the plagues of Egypt, so I had a ringside seat to a spectacular show, I thought. But God did the unexpected like he does so often, to me at least. He had mercy. It shouldn't have been unexpected because he was shown mercy to me, but he forgave the people because they had turned humbly to him. So, of course, I sulked and I fumed. God patiently taught me by an object lesson to start with. A vine grew up and then withered. I was upset because I missed it, but only because of how it shaded me. But then he taught me with logic. There was 120,000 children in the city who did not know and were not responsible for the evil that I so hated. And they all, innocent and repentant, were valuable to God. Remember, God can accomplish his will by many, many means, not just only one way. If he chooses to use you, learn from my life, Jonah's life. Don't refuse. And if you are successful in what the Lord does through you, do not become proud, for your heart is still prone to evil, and he is using you in spite of yourself, not because of some special merit. So remember me, the flawed evangelist, with the spectacular story. And when we meet again in God's kingdom, I want to hear your story with all the embarrassing details. So I hope again, I didn't want to do this for every week, so I hope that this was meaningful to you today to do more of a reading as a first person. But I hope again that we think about that, of all the different times, even as we do listen to God, and then we sometimes can get on our high horse, right, of, well, but at least I am righteous, pious, fill in the blank, right? And that's what happened with David last week. He did the things that he was supposed to do, and then he just, and when he was younger, he had a heart for God, but then as he got more and more power, as he got more and more temptations, maybe you would say, he turned away from God and God's will. So we have to be careful all the time. It's not just like one time. Oh, okay, now I'm good. I don't have to worry about this. This is a daily thing, right? Every day. Every day. God, how can you use me today? God, how can I serve you better? How is it that I can put away myself and put on you today, or put on Jesus? I want to conclude today with a devotional. Every once in a while, I'll share one from the UCC Daily Devotional. This one was July 2nd. If you happen to have them and you want to look it up, or else I can send it out if anybody likes it particularly. But it's by Kenneth Samuel, and it's called Can You Hear Me Now? And again, I just pray that this will take us out of this worship series. I pray as we're looking at, and we'll watch a video here in just a minute, but just to set that up, that all these different Bible characters that we have been seeing, I believe, and I would assume that you believe as a Christian, that we believe that those acts, those lessons learned, even those people in the Old Testament, all of those then point to a greater love than the greatest love in, we believe as Christians, the New Testament of the person of Jesus Christ. And so again, I pray that as we've been thinking about all of this summer, that we've also been thinking about that person of Jesus Christ and what he teaches us are all the things that we've been talking about this entire summer through the person of Jesus. I also hope that this series has also given you, or even if it's just today that you're hearing things, that I pray it gives you a sense of purpose, that God can use each and every one of us, and whatever our situations are, whatever our strengths or weaknesses, whatever our background is, wherever he places us, that God can use each and every one of us for his glory and for his purposes. And when I say that, I don't want it to sound like, oh yeah, so it'll be a bummer, but Christians are a sad lot, so just, follow God, because that's what we're supposed to do. The complete opposite, right? Because that's when we find freedom. That's when we find true joy in living and in being around other people, is when we let God use us for his purposes. That's when we find true satisfaction in life and helping others, that their lives as well are improved. Kenneth Samuel begins with Hebrews 1:1-2. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. We've been listening to the prophets all summer, right? But in these last days, God has spoken to us by God's Son, appointed heir of all things, and through whom God made the universe. I'll be the first to admit that I have little patience with people who do not return my phone calls, or my texts, or my emails. I just as soon delete them from my contacts and spend my time calling people who want to talk to me. But thank God I'm not God. All of human history is an attempt at God's initiative to enter into a dialogue of a covenant relationship with humanity. The biblical record is replete with the records of countless attempts by God to dialogue with us in our searching, in our desperation, even in our despair. But our lives have been busy with vain pursuits. Our ears have been shut by the clamor of hectic lives. We've been too preoccupied with the pursuit of personal agendas, or to answer or return or even pay attention to God's call. The records in the Bible tell us that even when God sent the prophets as messengers to engage us, we often ignored them, rejected them, and sometimes even killed more than a few of them. You'd think all that would be enough for God to completely cut off all communication with us and leave us to languish in the empty splendor of our own self-centeredness. But just when we'd expect God to scrap the covenant with humanity and cease all efforts to reconcile with us, God cleared God's voice and spoke a word of everlasting love, a word wrapped up in the flesh and named Jesus, that has been resounding around the world for over 2,000 years now and still counting. God is still speaking. And after so many attempts, I hear God saying, "Can you hear me now?" And he ends in a prayer. Gracious God, you speak emphatically, definitively, and lovingly through your Son, Jesus the Christ. We are not too busy or too preoccupied. We want to hear you, and we hear you now. Amen.